Okay. Let me know. And take that with us if we move, because I'm a mover.
Thank you.
I could hear myself laughing.
People will be hearing, you know, maybe it's not on you.
It is. I just heard myself laughing.
Did you?
Yeah. What did you say, Shell? What did you say?
Where did we put these?
Oh, just put them on there.
You looked a little weird.
Oh, it's just well, because the we went to print something off and there was no printer. We went somewhere else and they said yeah. Oh no, the printer's jammed. And so we thought, right, we're just coming. And because at the last minute, you know, you put the quiz into the thing. So now it's absolutely fine because I'm here. I just didn't want to let people down because I wouldn't want to do that.
You're here.
Yeah.
So
And we've just like, oh, it's been so busy.
it's a happy room.
Yeah, no, it's great. Oh dear.
I just had 5 minutes of the sun on my back, so I was
Nice. Just make sure your phone's turned off.
Who do we ask to?
At this current moment, no one. But if anyone wants to support us, with our outreach numbers, if they just tick any of this.
Put this here.
Yeah. Do you want the pen? And I just need to speak to Georgia now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Milton Keynes. Breastfeeding Festival, Milton Keynes. See, the gods were back with us. Yeah, maybe just maybe put those out, but not maybe put a couple of those, but just so that they're there, not necessarily for taking purposes. Yeah. No, that was just out of the box. I forgot the plastic thing, so just leave it. That's fine. It's going to be up on the screen. Yeah. Yeah, just pop it in. Oh dear.
And the sun is shining.
That it is.
Leave in charge. I'll do the quiz and the case study. Otherwise it will be like, we need to agree who's doing what. But if you want me to jump in, give an example, just let me know when. Yeah?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because otherwise it would be like, we don't want to be, you know, like jumping into each other's. Yeah? What do you think?
It's cool. Michelle spoke at my last conference that I put on. That's why I wanted to be here for the day, because there's loads of people that I know. But
Isn't it? That's
Yeah.
the idea.
you know what I haven't done? Let's take a picture. Oh, can you grab those? For those, they're my old ones. Somebody stole my other ones at the theatre.
No way.
Yeah, the person sitting next to me. I'm not very good, and we're right in the light as well. Yeah.
It's very good, doesn't it? selfie.
Oh, I know, but it's going to all be backwards. I'm not very good at this. Look, it looks
Without
backwards.
my glasses, it does look backwards.
No, it's because it's so bright.
Yeah. Maybe we should change
Oh,
the
it actually
angle.
comes up here, look. Stand
Yeah?
there. No, you.
Like, no, not.
Yes, you. And, oh, very funny. You don't need to point. Just smile.
This is a funny one. And a serious one. Oops.
Oh, I hate having photos taken. That would be nice, though, I suppose, for the, yeah. I suppose we should prove that we were actually here.
That is the thing you want to do. Come on, I'll take it. Tell me about your problem areas. I'll try and ignore them for you.
Starts here, finishes there.
Hang on.
Then no.
Aw. Let's stand in front of the gadget.
That's so we can.
That's perfect because you actually, your shoulders block it completely.
Excellent.
One of those must be all right.
Thanks, Shell. That's really kind.
You're both
Are you not
there.
speaking? Excellent.
No, I'm not
That's
speaking.
I heard you say it.
Involved. I don't have anything.
So
to
you're
do
just
with it.
literally here doing what we
Fold up with my bag, and I get to sit. Or I
ate
could,
some food,
you know,
had a
I
chat.
could walk out at any moment.
The luxury. The luxury.
I could be drunk right now and no one would know. Maybe tomorrow.
Did you hear anything?
Nothing. So
Oh, okay.
I'm earlier signs.
Okay. Excellent. Talking? Keep talking. Okay. So we need
So with a
to.
quiz, you'll be in control, and then I'll read them out, give the instructions, yeah, and then you can. Yeah?
No, all we need to do is I'll introduce.
Oh, you can do it,
We'll
I don't
introduce
mind.
each other,
Yeah.
and why don't you introduce me and I'll introduce you,
Okay. So nice one. Okay.
and then
How do you say?
we'll
Is it apparizio or scio?
Apparitio, but who nobody lisps. It's apparitio.
Well, no one would say that.
Exactly, apparitio Hancock's.
Well, I say the way.
How do you
I
say it?
manage. The way it's written, you know, most
How
people
do you
probably
say
say apparizio.
Okay.
And that's how I would say, but it's wrong.
Okay.
I know it's wrong. Apparitio, but some people probably say apparitio.
I think it'll be all right.
Of course we will. Even like if we just shut our God. It's so good, like all the information, like you know. I think what I find very hard, that's why I always keep the PowerPoints minimalistic, the text.
Yeah, but I had to put the background because if we don't put the background on it,
Exactly. But also, if it's going to be emailed to everyone, it's no
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
take it away. So
yeah.
it's that type
Well, I
of
don't know if it
PowerPoint.
is, but I wanted it to be.
But we can talk through it. Like, you know, you don't have to follow exactly what it says on the slide.
Out of interest, Shell, was there anything specific? Oh, sorry.
As well as
Anything specific that you wanted to know from our presentation?
What you mean so that I can start the heavy drinking now and
so,
sort out?
over WhatsApp or Skype or,
We're not going to speak particularly around infant feeding, which was the we were kind of the.
Everybody in the room knows about boobs.
okay.
That's what I said. I said, look, I can do boobs, but you don't need me speaking boobs to
Again,
Okay.
we have got to actually
Well,
see
One day I will
see the
find
ID.
space in my world to actually
We've
go
got
and
to
do some of this.
if you ever want to come, if you ever want to come and visit us, or you want, if something pops into your mind and you want to share something with our communities, you're always welcome. You know how to get hold of me. So do feel free. Even if you just want to come for a visit, we're happy to have visitors.
Heavy drinking during the day, just so I can see you clear about
Can we do heavy drinking when I'm not on work time?
perhaps why you know,
Yeah, our chief exec really frowns on it.
it's a funny thing. I got a lift to the station, and I came on the train, and I'm here without a pass, and
there's no alcohol inside.
I wonder whether that is normally the only thing that stops me from just being drunk all the time. Because when I'm thinking, last night I was like, I could have been drunk on the train. I'm not a big drinker.
She's just said, how many times has she?
Drunk on the train.
Yeah, drunk on the train, heavy drinking.
But it's like, because the reason, as if the reason for not drinking is because I'm normally driving.
Yeah.
I'm now, so like,
The reason for not drinking.
the reason for not being drinking. I love you, you're my best friend.
Oh, don't. I went to a book launch a couple of weeks ago, and a lady that I don't know, only through third party that I was introduced to, she was raging by halfway through the book launch. I mean, she really got a shift on at the book launch. Yeah, there was nice wine as well, not cheap, beautiful, like posh canapes, and all the bottles were there, and it was
I've never been to a book launch.
no, it was excellent. It was somebody I know, and I was like, good man. So she was blind drunk before we even got to the restaurant. So she was like, I don't actually know where we're going or how to get there, how to get away from there. I was like, don't worry, nameless person, I'll help you. And yeah, she went, yeah, well, what can I say? I can't help myself.
And you thought,
So yes. So yeah, that I was apparently the angel, and then I had to wait up because she lived 45 minutes beyond where I was staying till she got in, and I knew she was safe.
Can I just check how to say the middle part of the name?
Well, it depends. Do you want to live? Do you want to live?
No, I'm not Spanish.
Aparicio is fine. Yeah, it's Aparicio, but nobody's going to say that. So yeah, so Aparicio is just say Aparicio is fine.
And then I've just said about the charity,
What have you said?
supporting vulnerable people in the community and encouraging community cohesion, which I listed
Yeah.
as talk centering on supporting migrant parents, which is an underreported subject and one that needs more airtime.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So what we've covered, I was going to flick through the thing for you, but Grant's not back yet.
Okay.
So we've started with like a stand-up, sit-down quiz because it's after lunch, and then we've just given a bit of background on those two programs. So where that project came from, where this project came from, and they're all under the Early Parenthood program. It's the Manor Gardens is our mother organisation.
The umbrella.
That's our home. Early Parenthood program is an umbrella for lots of different projects. So I put two of them on there. There are two big sister projects. Then we have lots of other baby ones. Excuse the pun. So, but I'll give a very touch on that. So I've done a background to Bright Beginnings, a background to Cancer Blossoms, boring with text on the screen, and then we've done what the Early Parenthood program is, and I'll verbally just explain. Thanks, Grant. Here you go. Look. So quiz.
Oh, I see.
So we've just done. They've got pictures on them, like that.
Yes.
So just a bit of the background. I've done what the Early Parenthood program is because I didn't come into post until this was conceived.
Right.
Brought several linked projects together under one umbrella. Tells a little bit about what we do, so we can just quickly some of the services we provide, and they can ask more about that. Or there's two sets of figures. Keep it simple, and then that we'd like to share with you an example of how complicated life can be for a migrant woman alone in the UK, and that's the title of the case study.
Because I was going to say here about this, I was going to say about being a new parent anyway, but the language, but I can just leave it at that.
That's our case study.
Okay.
But it is a universal service. But these are the most vulnerable we end up working with. Mostly.
So I've only put those in to give some kind of sense of what phase one was about. And in here, although kick me if I haven't done it, I've put note to self. BB2 launch 2nd of October. Because we'll say if anyone wants to come, they can come. It's just a morning, so if they are in or around London, or they can nip down for the morning. So you might like to come from Milton Keynes. It's not too
crazy children.
I'm sure we can cope. It's only for a couple of hours.
One crazy child and one less crazy child.
Yes, I've been stalking Joe. This is Joe from the mother side.
Oh yeah, which I don't really do anything on anymore. No. Yeah. I write a children's book review page on Instagram, which is what I tend to do because I can do that on my phone. Whereas Tales from the Mother Side, I have to sit at a computer.
Yeah.
I don't have a computer. I have to get on my husband's work computer.
Yeah,
so
and
I just died of it, which is really annoying. It's a shame because I do enjoy it.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So say what we've got, say where we go, say about Bright Beginnings too, the difference is about building sustainability and integration, because the lottery don't normally fund twice.
Oh, and they have.
And that's what I need to say.
Amazing.
Yeah, another 3 years, another 3 years at full money.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it nearly killed us all in the process of getting it, but.
Do you need these handing out now, or they can be handed out at the end?
That's the case study. So
Because I'll sit on the stairs, so if you
could just pass them along the line. Yeah, because it's going to be the last. So we don't want to talk for long, present for long. We want to give these out. We're going to do the questions just because it's a little bit about London, a little bit about Milton Keynes, and it's a true and false. So it's after lunch, stand up, sit down, kind of thing. And then do a few slides, serious stuff, and then case study. And then the only question we've got from this case study is, we forgot to take the S off. But that is actually how she said it. So,
it could be her.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
Question.
So the only question that we're going to ask is, what would you like to know about this case study?
Yes, and then you can open it up
because I thought that was a really good way, because it's quite a meaty one.
Yeah, it is,
and that will lead us into other stuff, because we've got an hour, haven't we?
Yes.
So this part, I'll try not to rattle through it, but it won't take long. And then they'll have questions about this.
This would be our part of the questions and answers, basically.
We just thought we'd start it with something, as opposed to just, I know, boobs.
There's one in the raffle as well.
Oh,
Bigger one.
this is me.
I love it because it's got
mastectomy.
I think this is me these days.
I don't know. I can't smell. I'm getting more that, but I've never been. I was always quite. Yeah.
My one is
After everyone said, "Oh, when
bigger.
you've been breastfeeding, your boobs are going to go on," and I was like, "Not these boobs," and they didn't. And I've always been like, and now I've put a bit of
I don't
weight
think
on.
it's that.
Now
I
I've
think
put
it's
a.
a myth. It's a myth.
Pregnancy.
Now
and
I'm.
smoking.
Now I'm old and menopausal. I've noticed the sort of they're not quite.
Emma Pickett talks about it this morning.
Oh, I love Emma.
Saggy breasts. You don't even need to have had a child.
Yeah. No, I know quite a few people that.
It's just another thing to put people off breastfeeding, isn't it?
Yeah. So are you happy with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. I'll just
There you go then.
stick to what I've
Let's-
got
we'll
because
keep
it
a
looks like
copy.
you're covering it anyway.
Yeah?
And then can you give me a little wave?
But you're happy it's not specifically around feeding. That's what we'd agreed. Yeah. Shell said everyone knows about boobs anyway in this room.
Introduction's very brief. Just your job description. And
Just say, this is Vanessa Raposha. Hang on, she's the early parenthood program manager from Manor Gardens Welfare Trust. This is Liliana Spasso. See, I've got you both in my head. Natalia Spasso. I don't know who you are.
Well, I called you. What did I call? I called you Philistia.
Well, that's just insulting.
No, I called you that because I was thinking about texting her mama about it. Nice. I like when you get the kids now.
Oh, I'll show you some of the pictures from our conference. We had babies on the floor. There was balloons down the mid. We had one with the
pictures from last year. They were like it's full of them. And I think
yes.
The question and answers.
Yeah.
Thing. just been reminded, and it's a really good point.
What?
Somebody asks you a question,
Yeah.
but not everybody can hear it. So
Yeah.
can you repeat
Yes,
the
yeah,
question?
yeah.
We'll probably do it
Yeah,
anyway, but-
because they're thingy. No,
No, if
no,
they
no,
ask you
no.
a question.
They're-
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because they're recording it. It's been going.
weird.
It's not
Yeah,
working.
well, that's what we're trying to work out.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
That's why
I
we're
see.
having
Whether they
started.
will. I see.
But yeah, but also for like if somebody asks
Yeah,
a
yeah,
question
that's
quietly
fine.
here, you keep
That's
it.
fine. Yeah,
But
yeah,
they,
yeah.
after we ask the question, when they
No,
play the
no,
game,
no, no, not
I
that.
didn't understand.
For the case study.
Oh,
No,
for the
li-
case study.
I nearly called you Liliana again. Honestly, when we had Arzu and Ainur,
It was hard enough.
and
Nathaniel.
and we've got Lena.
Exactly.
No, but
Vanessa.
but Natalia is the. You called me Felicity this morning. Natalia is the lead project worker. Liliana is also the lead project worker.
Okay.
And we've got a Lena, and we had an Arzu and an Ainur,
It's confusing.
and a Najuma and a Natalia. So I'm typing, and it's like, and I'll type Najuma because somebody's talking, and I'm like, no, that's got to go to Natalia, and
Don't you ever confuse me.
no, okay.
That would be a...
Criminal offence, apparently. Oh, has it gone so far? You've been pleased?
Yeah, I'm really pleased. It's just we've had so the sound was working, echo.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
hate
then we
that.
switched the mics off,
Yeah.
but then it wouldn't stream to downstairs. So then
That's
people
the
that were
problem.
downstairs got upset, but people in here were complaining about the echo. So it's trying to sort that out.
Yeah. You'd think coming to somewhere like this, it'd just be sorted.
It's a lovely venue. It's beautiful.
Grant is so
I really, isn't
It's
he
so
lovely?
nice. Oh.
yesterday as well, just couldn't do enough for us. Whereas the other lady,
I really wanted to be here for both days, but I had to go to a funeral last Friday, and what I had on for last Friday, and because I'm busy this Friday, I have to do on Saturday. And I was like, because I would have just come up on Thursday night and stayed for the.
Feedback about him. It was really
Yeah.
nice.
Yes.
Really nice.
that would be great actually. That would be
Yeah,
a nice day.
I think so.
Yeah, he was very sweet. Do we know where the memory stick went?
Uh-oh. Did he give it back to you? I think he gave it back to you, no?
I zipped it away in my safe pocket.
Really appreciate it if when you leave at the end of the day you could leave us your feedback form. If you're coming tomorrow as well, then don't worry, you can do it tomorrow. But if you are only with us today, it would be brilliant because we really rely on that feedback.
That's You're back. Thank you for coming.
Here in a professional capacity and you need your cert certificate.
Molly used to be like that.
Janella said if you could do your feedback form and hand in your lanyard at the same time, then we would give you.
Oh, nice move.
A bit of bribery there. So you've got a little bit of time while we sort out sound if you want to do that. I'll be back when you do it.
Yeah, look. Oh, where have I put them? I thought I saved them. I wanted to show you something.
Oh. Nice. When were they taken? When were they taken?
Oh, just recently.
Just now. Beautiful pictures. Lovely. Nice. Oh, that's a nice one.
It's lovely, isn't it?
That reminds me of, you know, Titanic, when it ends, like when they go through the pictures of
Yeah.
the things that you wanted to do.
The boys.
Nice, beautiful.
Sweet.
Beautiful.
Nice, isn't it?
Who did them? This is like a professional photo
I think
shoot.
it's one of her friends.
Very nice eye.
I'm going to see if Molly's working when we do our launch. I might get it, because, yeah.
Yeah, no, if she wants to. I mean, you know, she's interested.
Oh, you know she is. Have they heard anything yet?
Yes, we're all good.
Oh, we can hear now.
Okay, me again, sorry, probably secondly, and I know you're now in the middle of your feedback form. Just want to interrupt you to introduce our fourth speaker. With music for the compliment.
Vanessa.
So this is Vanessa Aparicio Campos. Pronunciation there. So Vanessa is the Early Parenthood Program Manager
Oh, there you
at
go.
Manor Gardens. You can see the logo just behind me, Welfare Trust. So that's a charity in North London that supports the most vulnerable people in the community and encourages community cohesion. Her talk today centres on supporting particularly migrant parents. And for me personally, I feel it's a really under-reported subject and one that needs to have a lot more airtime, and that's why we're so delighted that Vanessa agreed to speak today. So without further ado, please give her a warm welcome.
It is on. It is on. And can I just introduce Natalia Spasova? She is the Early Parenthood Programme, one of our lead project workers, and she runs the Bright Beginnings project. So she's going to be sharing with me today. So thank you for having us. Manor Gardens Welfare Trust is based in North London. We cover lots of boroughs. We also have an FGM programme within our services, and that covers the whole of London. So I don't know if you've heard on the news yesterday, there was a launch of the FGM clinics through the NHS. So so the Dahlia project is actually running some of those clinics, and they're part of Manor Gardens. So we do a really wide range of things there, and we support sort of north central London communities. So without further ado, I believe you've all had lunch, and I've got the sleepy slot. So guess what I'm going to ask you to do next? Stand up and sit down. So, oh, we've double clicked. No, it's not. It's not. No, it's all coming through. Sorry, we had this before and it worked perfectly. No, it's running on. Ugh, it's running on now. It's not going on a click.
Oh, so it's just running on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, what, so you get the answers? Close your eyes. Too late. Yeah. So that's 2 questions gone. I like that lady. Deserves a shake and a rattle. Should we try again? No, it's running on. We trialled it downstairs.
So it's showing the answer at the same time as well.
Yeah. Oh, have I got to do it by hand? I can't click. It's on click, but I can do it with my finger. So I'm going to stay behind the desk. Stand up if you speak more than one language, please. That's quite good. Liking this. Usually get lots. Okay, you can sit down again. Stand up if your parents or grandparents emigrated to this country. Ooh, that's quite good. We've done this where virtually nobody stood up. And we were in central London, which was very strange. Stand up if English is not your mother tongue. Ooh. So fewer, but still. Thank you. So, overall, about 10% of London residents do not speak English as a main language. This is the standing up, sit down part. True or false? Is that because everyone read it? Okay. Cheater. So it's 22%. So we work primarily in our programme, Camden, Islington and Haringey, as well as Hackney, Barnet and Enfield, but primarily the three of the big boroughs. In Camden, resident children speak 93 languages and dialects. True or false? True or false? Stand up, sit down. True, stand up. Ooh, that's a 50-50 split, roughly. Okay. Didn't guess that, though. Yeah. So you can imagine some of the challenges. Without me telling you, you can see them. Okay, 75% of babies are being breastfed at 6 to 8 weeks in Islington. True or false?
If you think it's true, stand up, please.
Okay, we are at a breastfeeding festival. It's actually slightly higher than that, and they've just got their reaccreditation. Tell Rosemary. Rosemary will be very pleased for that clap. The infant feeding lead. We thought we'd bring it a bit more local as well. So 40% of Milton Keynes' population is aged under 35. If you don't want to stand up, we can have a show of hands. We're all engaged. Oh look, that's mostly okay.
It's a very young town.
Very young town.
I'm glad it was. It did say stop.
True? Anyone think this is true? Oh, just a handful of hands. Okay. "70 languages are spoken as first languages." Which is really interesting if you think that Camden has 163, so that's a very diverse community here. Who thinks this is true? Oh, so we've got mostly false in the room. It's not bad, could be worse. Oh, I've duplicated. I apologise. Well done. She was rushing me. So, 70% of newborns. I think that's quite good. Okay, so you'll have to forgive us. We're going to do a quick boring section. It's not boring, but I'm going to stand away because it's really close. So Bright Beginnings had a phase 1, which was from September 2016 to end of March 2019, when we wrapped up the project. This was the remit of phase 1. It was to trial a model using women drawn from the community to work with the most vulnerable populations. So Manor Gardens Welfare Trust has a health advocacy service, and the health advocates were constantly coming back and finding that, you know, it was women, mothers, that were pregnant women, that were taking up more time than the advocates have, because the advocates at that point were working 1 day a week. So they sought funding, and at that time it was big lottery, and they got 3 years funding to run this service. Now, we can probably click. Yeah. From that, so about a year after that, Camden liked what was happening, wanted something slightly different, wanted something that was universal for all families, and but also really recognise what the barriers were for families. So you can see it's not just language that we work on, and this is we call this our perinatal mental health peer support programme, is its long-winded title. It's known to all of us as Blossoms. So that came out of the Bright Beginnings project, and Bright Beginnings and Camden Blossoms are sister projects, and they're two big projects that work within the early parenthood programme. They weren't the only two projects. I came in spring 2018 when they made it into a programme, and we were working actively in Hackney. We have money from other organisations within the different boroughs to fund different projects. So Cloudsley funds a project called Me Time, which is about supporting Islington women's emotional well-being to improve their physical health. So it is a range of activities. We provide the space and they provide the activities. So what are some of the things we've had? So it's really led by the women. So we've had hand knitting and henna.
Pole dancing, henna.
One day, yeah. And the day that I came into the office and every single person, female, that I met had their hair plaited. Be they this big or this big. So yeah, they do what makes them feel good and they come together as women. And where possible for that activity, we provide childcare. And at the moment, they're looking to start a physical activity group that's run by the women for the women. And it's going to be inside and outside. So probably involve lots of buggy pushing. So we primarily, but not exclusively, support migrant families. We've got bilingual family mentors. So Natalia speaks English, Bulgarian, Czech and Russian. We've got Liliana with Portuguese and Spanish. Najuma, who's Somali. We have a Turkish mentor. One has just left us and we've just appointed a new one. So we have Turkish and Kurdish. We have Albanian is our newest addition to the family. And we have Arabic and Italian, which is an interesting combination, in the form of Lena. And Lena also leads on a sister programme that is run through Manor Gardens, which is a navigator programme for the Syrian refugees who are living in Islington. So when we were asked about tendering for that programme, we looked at our caseload and most of the people, Bright Beginnings was already supporting those families because most of them had children and they were either ex-clients of ours or current clients of ours. So it seemed like to bring it to Manor Gardens was a really good home for it. So yes, we have an amazing team of volunteers it's more than another 10 languages, and there's new ones come up all the time. We've also got community interpreters within Manor Gardens and bilingual health advocates in Turkish, Spanish, Arabic and Farsi. And Bengali, yeah. We've also, Manor Gardens has Living Well services, which includes a stroke service, a friendship network, and wellbeing service, which does a range of diverse activities, but focuses a lot on mental health. We provide, support, empowerment, evidence-based information. Anything you want to specifically add to that?
Well, our mission, or I think it's the Manor Gardens Welfare.
Hold on. Just hold it. Not too close.
It's probably the right place to mention that our organization, the Manor Gardens Welfare Trust, was founded like over 100 years ago. So we've got some good booklets about the history of the trust itself, which is, it's interesting to know. But that's how it was started. It was started by local women who wanted to increase the well-being of local babies who were, dying basically because of malnutrition and simple things that they wanted to show the parents how to do it so they can improve babies' health and well-being. So basically our program is going back to the roots of how the whole trust began or was founded, so which is really nice. So our main goal is improving health and well-being of the clients that we work with ultimately, and that's something that we're very passionate about, and we spend a lot of time on infant feeding and supporting the families when it comes to offering the support ourselves if we can. If we don't know how to, we have lots of partners within the boroughs we work in to refer to that type of support. Many of our volunteers are actually breastfeeding supporters, for example. They work for lots of organizations across.
And, and two of our volunteers recently did their BFN training.
Yes,
And last year, a couple of our volunteers did their breastfeeding network training. And so they volunteer with us, but they also supporting the Camden baby feeding team. So to bring an extra bilingual aspect to that. We do, while we're on the feeding, we work closely, we're on part of the early years nutrition strategy group. So we meet regularly with the infant feeding leads from the different boroughs that we work in. We're working on supporting in infant feeding drop-ins, but also other ways to be a bit more creative about bringing the right messages to the clients and getting them involved. In one drop-in, we've actually changed it from a drop-in to an appointment system to increase the number of women that can't leave the house for medical reasons, who can't leave the house unless it's for medical reasons in the first 40 days or so. We've now got an appointment system in an area where we have a higher proportion of Turkish and Somali women, so that they have a legitimate reason to come and have breastfeeding support. So that's really the kind of thing that we encourage. We also do lots of joint visiting, so the infant feeding team can't always access, or the breastfeeding peer supporters can't always get interpreters in a timely way. Sometimes the families have already been referred to us, so it seems silly to have an additional interpreter when we could have a mentor who already knows the woman and the family come into the home. They're just some of the things. Since the end of the first phase of Bright Beginnings, it's taken about a year, and we've been able to secure further community fund money, so lottery money, for the next 3 years. So Bright Beginnings is just about to enter into its second phase, and we're actually launching on the 2nd of October in Islington. If anyone wants to pop down, if you're in or around London, you are welcome. At the end is my email, if you just let me know, and you're more than welcome to come down. It will be a morning event on the Wednesday the 2nd of October. We're located in between Archway and Holloway. What else? Do you want to talk? Yeah? So one of the main things that the second phase is doing is helping us become more integrated with our statutory partners to help inform system change. But also we're doing a lot of co-produced work. So we're with the clients that we work with, do you want to talk about the
maternity voices?
Yeah, and the case study example, just briefly. I think it's nicer if I don't talk and you actually hear about a woman.
Mm-hmm. So I think in relation to the second bullet point, I think we're working with, I think we've become really good at liaising with partner organizations, both statutory and voluntary, in the voluntary sector. And I think I can give an example of a mother we've recently started working with who has a 10-month-old baby with Down syndrome, who doesn't speak a word of English. And in the process of getting involved with our organization and us supporting her, we've found out more about her experience of giving birth and what has happened, and during pregnancy as well. So I think we are in the process of liaising with Maternity Voices, which is an organization which is like a link between statutory maternity services and the women. Okay.
Does everybody know what the Maternity Voices partnership is? Yeah, I thought you would.
Okay. So I'm currently liaising with the coordinator of Maternity Voices to see when to bring her in, which meeting, next meeting, to share her story and inform maternity services basically on.
Do you want to give the key points of what?
Yeah,
As
well, I
anonymously as
can.
possible.
Yeah, will do. We have time, don't we? Yeah. Okay. So basically, this is her story. So I mean, this is what she's telling us now. So it hasn't been proven. I mean, it might not have happened exactly the way she told us, but it's her side of the story. So. She stated, she reported that she didn't know that the baby had Down syndrome during the pregnancy, so it wasn't discovered during the pregnancy. So I'm not a medical professional, so I don't know whether this is possible or not. But in the third trimester, she was asked to attend scans, regular scans, like I think fortnightly. And as far as she understood, I think the problem was that she wasn't given an interpreter at those scans. None of those scans, so she didn't quite know or understand what was happening. So I think her understanding was that the reason for the regular scans was the fact that the baby was too small or too big, one or the other, can't remember. Probably too big, I think it was too big. Yeah. And then, so when she gave birth, it wasn't obvious, it wasn't apparent that the baby had Down syndrome. No one told her, so she didn't know. Baby was taken away. I think baby had breathing problems when it was born. And then I think baby was in an incubator for a few days. Baby had lots of health issues, like underwent lots of, I think, number of operations. It was in hospital for 4 months. So I think obviously it depends on the severity of the condition. I think it was quite complicated, the baby's health concerns or issues. And I think she was only told, according to her again, that baby had Down syndrome on day 4 after giving birth. And there was an interpreter at that meeting with the health professionals when she was given that information, and it was a complete shock to her. And since then, I think she's quite happy with the support that she's been given and the services she's received from all health professionals in terms of looking after the baby, caring, and doing everything that they had to be done in order to save baby's life, I think, because baby's condition was quite, poor at birth. I think now, our role, often is to liaise with, because sometimes health professionals don't know. I think, although women do tell that they need an interpreter, but it's hard, I think, because maybe sometimes information is not recorded at the right time or in the right place, I don't know. Or also it's about funding, of course. It's expensive, paying for interpreters. So I think our role does involve advocating on behalf of clients and, explaining, why it is essential for someone to have an interpreter. We do accompany them to important meetings and appointments when we know we want to be absolutely sure that they would understand, and when we are not 100% sure whether there would be an interpreter, especially.
Do you want me to take?
You can take over, I think, yeah, so it's a battle.
So that particular lady had never had an opportunity to discuss how she felt about the birth, how she felt about her child, her relationship with her partner, in caring for that child and what the future meant for them. So she's had interpreters since day 4, most of the time, for many of the consultations. But what hadn't happened until the point when she was engaged with our services is having an opportunity to really discuss how she felt, how things looked from her side. She'd had no opportunity to share her voice. She'd had no debrief. She was quite emotional. It took a little while to kind of pull out the strands of the story.
Maybe it's good to mention about the chorus project that some of these women would be.
Yeah. So women like this, part of the work we do, this is kind of grouped it into things we do, but within each thing it's multi-layered. So that lady in particular will be feeding into individual therapy with an interpreter present. Is she attending the music? She's also going to attend music therapy group that we run with the Chorus Project, which is London-based, and it's for women that have had a range of experiences. Yeah, primarily it's domestic abuse and other or FGM. Oh dear. Does anyone have any questions about the kind of things that we offer there, or is it fairly self-explanatory? I'll just pick up on the emotional health and well-being workshops and activities. We're using positive psychology as our evidence base. We trialled it. We tried some different models. We found that the positive psychology, the basis was in the right place. It was really versatile. We can adapt it. We have for some of the communities, a really low level of literacy and education. So some of these women have come from villages where they might not have attended any schooling, or they may have attended 1 year before they had to do housework or other work. And then they've married and come over to... Newest, most recent client gave birth at 13. Okay, the latest client that has come on to our project, one of Natalia's clients, gave birth at 13. So we work with older mothers, younger mothers, mothers of 10 children, mothers of 8 children that don't want to have 10 children, but their husbands think they should keep going, mums that have had 9 caesarean sections, which we all know, yeah. So women that have had multiple terminations. A particular one that stood out for me was a lady in the Somali mentor's caseload who had had multiple miscarriages and then had a stillbirth, and her father and her brother took the baby from the hospital to the funeral home, buried the baby, and won't tell the mum where the baby is. She's had no advocate in the hospital for that. She's had no therapy for that until she came to us. Don't get us wrong, we're not standing here saying we can fix everything and we're the panacea for, we're not. We rely on our relationships with other organisations. A grieving woman about to birth a baby, 34 weeks pregnant, sought counselling for the loss of her father because, you know, just about to birth your first baby, it brings up a lot of things. It was a recent death. We managed to get her counselling for £5 a session, and her husband didn't think it was important enough. So we have a tiny little slush fund. So in this instance, we paid that £5 for her sessions. She was able to have sessions right up until she gave birth. She's having a little break and then she's going to go back. But so we always welcome donations. We work with other organisations. You probably saw Little Village. They're being, I think one of their patrons is now one of the royal family. I think it's one of the Sussexes, I think. But they're based in Camden and in South London. They're fabulous. We're doing some work with them and other statutory services around her as well. Hello. Little Village, they take in donations of baby items, nappies, all sorts of things, and give them out to families that need. The nice thing with Little Village is they don't, they gift them. So people come and they make it a social occasion. It's not handout as such. It's a gift. And what we find is that lots of people who receive that gift and the way that they receive it, they want to recycle that. They want to go on and they give back, which is it's a lovely model. And we're trying hard to have capacity to work a little bit more closely with them.
We're a little village ourselves.
We are a little village ourselves. Yeah, we do lots of cross sort of social events as well across all the community. So when we offer workshops, it's not necessarily in Arabic or Somali. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's in more than one language. Sometimes it's in English. Our peer support groups, we had a number of referrals last year that were for women who didn't fit into one of our mentors' languages. We didn't have a volunteer for them, and primarily because they were very traumatised by what had happened in their life, but they had a tiny bit of English. So we piloted what one of our mentors calls the special peer support group for the extra special women. And it's probably been one of the best pilots that we've trialled. So we brought together women that had been trafficked, women that were experiencing domestic abuse, and a woman who's been alienated by her community for her choices to not stay married to an older man who was quite violent. So she doesn't see the children that she had with him. She was married very young to him. And yeah, none of her community will speak to her in the UK either. And she didn't really have anywhere to go. And now she's joined the special peer support group. And these women who have quite traumatic histories have formed their own peer support. And it's been really lovely to see. And interestingly, some problems that we didn't even know about have come up from their discussions. So we've been able to offer them some themed sort of facilitators to come in and discuss things that they wanted to discuss, which is really nice. So we do lots and lots and lots of different things. And it just depends what's emergent at the time. So when there was the mosque attacks, the peer support groups changed. So because we're very close to Finsbury Mosque. So one of the husbands was actually injured in that attack. So it has a ripple effect on all of the community. So we change tactics, we provide different things, or we maybe not do something and do something else. We're led by the community and the women that we work with. That's how many women we had attending our workshops in the first phase of Bright Beginnings, which isn't bad. And that's how many received individual support in our first phase. So we thought we could put a couple of numbers in. And now we just want to share the case study. We could talk for ages about what we want to talk about, but we're going to give you this. And our only question to you is, what would you like to ask us about this case study, which has been anonymised?
Nice timing.
Does that work for you?
15 minutes to question.
Does anyone have any questions before we move on about anything that we've just said? Or have we answered?
So the child who gave birth at 13, she's 21 now.
So she was...
Yeah.
So she's got 3 kids.
Okay, so she wasn't 13 giving birth?
No, we have... so the question was the child that gave birth at 13. I think it was a safeguarding question coming. The lady in question is just 21 now, and she's got 3 children, and has just come to our services. And
The oldest is 7, I think.
yeah. So just to reassure you. Although, well, it's interesting actually. So my background's health. I'm a registered health professional. Our organisation has all of the right governance. We are a charitable organisation. We have a safeguarding, a designated and leads. our chief executive sits on the health and wellbeing boards as well, and we have really close links. In Islington, where we're based, we also run Hornsey Road Children's Centre for the borough. So we have 2 sites. We have the Manor Gardens site, which was the buildings which were bought by the lady who started the charity, and we also now have Hornsey Road as well. So in Islington, there's the integrated early years services are called Bright Start, and we're a voluntary partner in that integrated early years service. Has everyone got a case study? Yeah? So we just wanted to share with you how complicated life can be for a migrant woman, essentially alone in the UK, who may not speak English, may have no recourse to public funds, which is something we find a lot of, and may be traumatised by her life experiences. So if we give you all a short time to read that case study, and then when anyone has the first question, do pop your hand up and we'll start to answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. I hope we removed because I wanted to remove that doesn't matter. Because now he's older, but it doesn't matter. It's like it can still be. Because it's a case study from that. Yes. The first case, it's fine. We don't need to come in. We know it. You can read it.
Oh, first question in the room.
Can I ask, did she not have, did the midwife or a care provider not provide her with an interpreter to make sure that she understood?
So the first question is whether the midwife or the care provider provided an interpreter to make sure the lady understood what was happening. And the answer, Natalia, is? I think...
Well, I think it's she now first when she was referred to us by the community mental health team, baby was 7-8 months old, her first baby, so we were not involved during the antenatal period and actually even the perinatal, you can say. So according to her, she didn't. So often her husband acted as her interpreter, which is completely inappropriate. I mean, I went along with her when she was having talking therapies, and again, her husband was the interpreter.
Can I just say that so the family mentors don't act as interpreters. Essentially, that's not what we do. We're advocates. However, sometimes in the course of being an advocate, the safest action is for the mentor to act as an interpreter. So there are specific situations where a mentor would step in and act as an interpreter. Sometimes in social care proceedings, there is an interpreter present, but having the mentor who also speaks that language, we have had a few...
But half of us are trained, qualified
Yeah.
interpreters anyway.
Yeah, so half of the mentors are already qualified interpreters, but we have had occasion where we've been in the middle of a core group meeting or a conference, and what the interpreter's actually been interpreting isn't necessarily what the client is saying. So we've had to kind of say, stop. You can't say, okay, we can't have a child protection conference now. So what we've done is just used our mentor as kind of a stopgap and a safety net to make sure that it continues and it's actually a legitimate conversation, and the client's words are actually being told in the way that they're supposed to be.
And this particular client in the case study, I don't share a language with her, but because she had little English, this is the reason why she was referred to us, and it was found appropriate for me to support her. Yeah.
because
Say that again.
because in my experience, many women might feel uncomfortable sharing their story with somebody from the same community, even if they are a qualified interpreter.
And that's a really, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, that's a really good point. So the mentors have come from the community. So one of our mentors is in her community seen as a leader, but she's also seen as a person where that confidence can be held. So she can be discreet. She doesn't share information between families. That's probably because I wasn't there at the very beginning, reading records and talking to people and clients, it took quite a long time for the mentors to establish their place and be seen as trusted and professional. Not just in the communities, actually with the statutory services, we're still on a upward. It isn't upward; it's very positive. We have amazing support, but it is still an upward spiral. Another question. Oh, hi. I was like, I haven't got my glasses on. I didn't see it was you. Sorry.
Actually, I wanted to ask about your relationship with statutory services, specifically along the lines of consent, because I've done some work with migrants and we have the same problems with translation services and the NHS language line, and not always being appropriate or effective. And so how do you navigate feeding back to the NHS, because they need to address the situation that a lot of these women are not giving informed consent?
Ooh, one of my favourite topics. So one of my really soapbox issues is we don't give enough information about, for example, antenatal screening in the UK. So is there anyone in this room who somebody sat down with and told them the process of ultrasound and why we do it, and that it's actually part of the antenatal screening, and that you could discover there was something with your baby and it is actually an opt-out situation? It's never ever explained. So if it's not explained to, native English speakers. We currently have a lady is she in Bulgaria?
Yes.
Your Talapese lady. Yeah, he's gone to Bulgaria because she was told there was something wrong with her baby. So she's gone to somewhere somebody can explain to her, and where she felt it was safe and that everything will be done. She's actually coming back now, but she hadn't realised certain things, and we had a call from Haringey Migrant Centre about 4 weeks ago, asking if we could go up to the hospital there and then, because there was a lady who been told her child had talipes, which there's varying degrees of how that can affect a child, and her husband had walked out on her and left her 6 months pregnant. So. Yeah, but so there's cultural things, there's, so many things. But yeah, consent. So we have a full consent procedure. Women understand that if they're referred to us, we'll give an update to their referrer. So we get referrals from GPs, midwives, health visitors, family support, social workers, CAMS, schools, where else? Oh, the migrant centres, solicitors, all sorts of different people. Lots of self-referrals by word of mouth, because the mentors are fairly well established now in their communities. And Natalia is the mistress of spotting someone on a bus or in a supermarket and saying, "Hello, my name's Natalia and I work for..." and I see you're pregnant, or I see you have a baby, and then suddenly there's another 10 cases on my desk. And this morning it was, walking to the coffee shop and said, "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you that somebody phoned me and I know you'd say yes, so I've accepted this client already." So outreach is like massive. for what we do. But yeah, information sharing, we're in the process of trying to get an information sharing agreement in place with the Whittington midwives. We use password protection for documents. We will go and sit somewhere and stay there until somebody speaks to us. We will phone how many times a particular agency, or email them again and again and again and again and phone them. And we have, gone to an appointment with a lady and then not left until all the interpreters were booked for the upcoming appointments. But we could do with another 50 or so staff to make all that happen. But yeah, it's a really big issue. It's a really serious issue. But oh no, one more question.
So, on the same line of consent, I live in Northampton, not London. What would you say to someone? Because I had a recent case, without going into too much detail, where I felt very uncomfortable. The interpreter we had spoke the same language but a different dialect. She kept saying she didn't know exactly what the mum was saying. So it wasn't proper interpretation. She was doing her best in interpreting. At least she was honest, saying that she wasn't interpreting 100%. But
what would we do?
What would I?
What would you do?
I'm a healthcare professional myself, and the dad did speak English, but again, I agree. I think it's really bad practice when we do use other family members, and it does happen way too much. And he asked a question that it was a safeguarding concern, but basically it all came down to the fact that it was only a safeguarding concern because the mum couldn't speak English, and she gave 2 different accounts because she was trying her best to speak English, and it was all
okay. So the question, to summarise ish, was healthcare professional who was in an interaction, because they've got to hear it downstairs, was in an interaction with a family. The mum only spoke some English, the interpreter, no English. The interpreter didn't speak the same dialect as the woman, and the father was, the partner of the mum, was being used as an interpreter. So what would you do? I step over and put my health professional hat on.
If I put my interpreter's trainer hat, because in my other job I train interpreters, you have the right to terminate that appointment if it's not an emergency one. If the issue is not pressing, you have every right to say, I'm really sorry, I'm not happy to go ahead with it. I'd like to, I know it's costly, but if this is the case you're describing, you have every right to do that. And if the interpreter has been trained and qualified, he or she would have known that they had exactly the same right.
And that's what I was going to say. But from the experience is, I've done it. I've sat in a core group and said, this isn't right, because things are open to misinterpretation and somebody can give slightly different statements. And can you just say that into the microphone, because I'm not going to be able to just say that so that people can understand.
When the dad asked what would happen if he refused consent, he was told that would make, by the social worker, that would make her very concerned that there was a serious concern going on, that they were trying to hide something just by refusing consent.
So in that, you can hear that, just from that one statement, you can see the significant barriers that these families are facing. So often there are no concerns about the care, they're doing absolutely their best in really difficult circumstances. A lot of families, one we were working about this morning, living in a sublet. So they're living in a flat that they pay rent for, which is sublet from somebody who's disabled, who gets housing benefit and doesn't live in that property. And they don't know their rights. They don't know that their entitlements to get benefits themselves. They don't know things they can do. And it's often seen as they've done it deliberately. So there's already, people are judging them. That's before you've even got to how they're caring for their children, the kind of clothes they're wearing, if they try to speak English, how well or how poorly they speak it, and 1,000,001 other.
On the topic of interpreters, it's really frustrating and disappointing, but it's unlikely that things will get better anytime soon because the business itself is not well regulated. So because they're provided by agencies, even the top ones, the Sharks, Language Line, the big word, they're not doing the right thing. They're constantly recruiting people who are not qualified and they don't know what they're doing basically. So, and they don't know how they're booking them either. So the agencies themselves are not run well because they should make sure they can make that. I mean, sometimes it can happen, but there should be a gender match, a dialect match. These are simple things. Come on. Yeah.
And so, so that obviously came from Natalia, not the organisation.
Just for you to know why it's happening, because it's, you know, you have peace of mind at least when you know what the reasons for this is. These are
We also have a lot of, oh, it's okay because she has a daughter that speaks English or she has a son that speaks English. And you get an 11-year-old going to his mum's gynecological appointment. So she's had a baby, 6 in the family, and he has to go and talk about her prolapsed uterus. Yeah.
So it's also about linguistic competences, you know, that's the least thing.
Question? Oh, statement.
You're obviously doing amazing work and really, really meeting needs in your locality, and there will be those needs all over the UK. And my statement really is just as a citizen that I have a deep sense of shame and embarrassment and anger and many other emotions that actually we need this. And I just think it's really shameful in 2019 in the UK that, that's all.
Well said. I think everybody heard that. Yeah.
Well, I need to say something. I don't think you should be ashamed because loads of you, like people like you, do amazing work with the women that we work with, like whether you are, you know, members of statutory organizations, voluntary organizations. I mean, you know, all the professionals and people that I have worked with, like, they're all amazing and they're doing their job, you know.
Best they can.
Exactly. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. I think it's just, most of the times is about, it takes time, you know, for things to happen and for ideas to crystallize and people to realize this is an issue. So it's...
And that links perfectly just to say, I'm going to round up, that we have moved into phase 2 of Bright Beginnings, which we're going to publicly have a little song and dance about on the 2nd of October. And it is about sustainability and it is about that informing the system change. So this took us a year to get this money, and that was the main thing that the community fund were looking for. How are we going to make it sustainable so that if we don't have lottery money? So the first thing we did was go out and talk to all of the boroughs who'd been at our end of project conference and all said, bravo, really well done, you know, we've loved it. And we went back to them and we said, okay, that's fantastic, thank you for your support, Public Health and Director of Communities. Could you put your money where your mouth is? And we had a bit of radio silence for a while, but they've just started to come back online, and they're making active movements towards doing that. So I think in Islington particularly, Camden are coming on board. Haringey want to, but there's a few technical issues in Haringey. But you know, I think change is coming, but it has been hard won. But it's something that we won't, and that was part of the reason for doing the participatory appraisal work with BAME Maternity Voices, was to get those experiences shared so that we can actually use that as a little bit of leverage. So we're a small organisation. I have a small team, but they're a fantastic team. I just have to publicly say that because, you know, it's great to lead them, but they do the work. They're fantastic. So any time you feel like contributing, be it a physical thing, if you have people in London that want to donate some items. We work with children of all ages. We primarily, our remit is the early parenthood, but you know, our families aren't just their babies, they're older children, their grandmas. We're doing some intergenerational work with the stroke service and the wellbeing services, where we're going to have community lunches. So we'll bring the stroke club together with the early parenthood women and the grandmas and granddads from those communities as well. So yeah, if you want to pop by and see us at any point, obviously let me know first. If you'd like to come to the couple of hours of our launch on the 2nd and you're in London, feel free, let me know. And if you want to send any money or items our way, or if you have a specialism you think would benefit anyone in our community, you'd like to come and host a workshop or an area event in any of our boroughs or with us at Manor Gardens, we welcome that partnership. So please do feel free to get in touch, and you'd be good if you knew how to do that. And we're on Twitter. We are coming back on Facebook and Instagram, but they need a bit of work. But yeah, Community Fund is our biggest funder. Camden and Cloudsley also give us some money. So thank you for putting up with us for an hour. Is that all right?
Thank you so much, Vanessa and Natalia. Another talk go on. The frustrating thing about today is that we want something more, but unfortunately we are inside by time. So thank you so much. Indira will be speaking at 3:30, so you've got just under 10 minutes to grab a coffee, go to the loo, fill in your feedback form. We've got some listing materials if you want to grab them.
I mean, the worst case scenario could be to get the telephone which still we can work.
Did someone tell you that was still a bit echoey?
She did. It sounded okay downstairs, but still because of the heat downstairs. We try to turn down the volume as much as we can, so it's not as bad as it was this morning. And I think that's not the best way to get it for now. So what I suggest is that when people use the microphone, they stand with the phone away from the left side, and they should be doing so.
Yeah, our school's
And if we can work together, absolutely, we can be on a joint fundraising event. And our where the center is, you know, have you been?
No, I've never heard of it.
So when's
It's in Tottenham Square. So it doesn't go to
okay, well, it's not that close.
It's right, it's right on the edge. One side of the range is the big one.
When it comes to fundraising, we want to work class to be the better way.
But, you know, all our children come from
But even with the fundraising, like, my last
yeah. But I think it'd be very good for our children to know what else is going to the next meeting.
our center where we are, we have the space, so maybe we have nearby venues, we have some rooms which are quite big as well, where we can do something together, like maybe when the kids can get it, that would be great.
Hi dear, I'm Grant. I'm here to assist you with your IT.
Oh, that's right.
You're very welcome. So I just want to check, you have it on memory stick or laptop? Ah, brilliant.
We already tried it and it worked.
Yours don't happen to be already loaded on here, are they? Are they any of them?
No,
No, alright.
because I said I'd rather not pass it. I don't want to pass it on to there.
Okay, alright.
God knows where it ends. I'd rather just keep it on the So it's this one.
So, yeah, you double click on that.
No, that's not nice. I know what Tessa will say.
There we go.
And then how do I make it look perfect?
The only thing is, because you'll be not copying your presentation onto the computer, I'm going to leave your stick in there, but that is the same port that we use for the presentation pointer. Oh, it's still
That's
there.
what they said to me. Yeah, we tried it.
Oh, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I thought it was the same thing. It's absolutely fine. You go first. Yeah.
And you're going to be around in case I get stuck.
The other thing, Indira, is this is your microphone. So if you could wear this sort of, facing outward.
Facing outward.
Yeah, like that, so it can clearly pick up your voice, because this is being transmitted downstairs as well.
I can't see it.
So It's a tiny little thing. Here we go.
Okay, so I just put it.
Maybe, if I may,
Yeah, you.
so we'll do it like,
A tiny little.
let's try that. Alright.
That works. I have to put on my.
You can keep doing yes.
Perfect. I put it in.
Yeah, in your pocket or yes, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, that's all I need.
And it's on, yes.
Is it on?
Yep. Now just check the top of the packet to make sure. Yep.
Yeah. Good.
And that's open. Yep. Okay, I'm going to go and check downstairs to see if everybody can see and
Okay.
do the same thing.
That's good. Do you think I can get a little glass of water? I have a little dry. Where? No, I can go and get it. Where is
You
it?
can see it. There's downstairs. There is a little water machine just on the right hand side by.
Let me go and get it.
There's no way of retrieving that.
Probably not. No. Now that it's been taken off.
Are you Lauren's
Oh,
dad?
Dad, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
Indira.
Yeah,
Very
hi.
nice to meet
Nice
you.
to meet you.
She told me you were coming.
I'm gonna get some water. Is it they told me the water machine is downstairs?
Yes, downstairs at the back of the building.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, the water's down there on the right side.
Thank you. Coming to my book?
I have to pay for a ticket. We're not allowed to come in.
Oh, that's not nice. That's so nice.
Are you doing it today?
Right now.
We haven't got screens out here.
You should. Yeah, my iPad. Yeah, thank you. I'll self-introduce myself to your dad. I'm ready when. I don't know when.
I think
We're still waiting.
Basically, I'm taking a picture of the case study that you presented, and I want to show it to her in the sense that this is this, broke that down to this. I think that I think this one.
Is it 1 hour?
Yeah,
In
so
total, including questions?
3 till 4:30, so it's the hour slot.
But that includes questions.
That's all we've got. Yeah, we have to be out about 5ish. So if you can get it in within the hour, but if it overlaps questions for a couple of minutes, then there's not going to be a problem. So I'm just going to get Vanessa to just sort of wrap up.
That's okay.
Some flashbacks and I think everyone's in now as well. So get out of your way. It's a boo. It's a very large breast too.
It's a very large, it's a voluptuous breast.
Any questions? Because you're going to have a mic on you. You'll have a microphone
Well,
somewhere.
it's gone. It's here. Yeah.
So, if you take any questions at any point,
I pass it.
just say no, because they might be up there somewhere.
Okay.
So just say the question was.
I repeat the
and
question.
The trouble is, if it's a long, rambling question, just summarise it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, because you won't. When they ask a question, it won't. They won't have the microphone.
That's true.
Okay. Right.
Fair enough.
Thanks for helping out, Lauren. And,
that's
he
great.
loves this
Oh
new job.
yes, I was thinking if you could take a picture of us
I will, I'll
together
try to.
before.
Are you here tomorrow or not?
No, I'm not.
I'll try
I
and
leave
take a
after.
Afterwards, I'll take a picture
I don't
of
know
the two
if
of you.
she's still around,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm ready.
I'll see if I can just shout rather than try and use your microphone.
That's okay.
Hopefully
I'm not sure it's. Oh yeah, it is.
It's there, yeah. Hopefully I'm loud enough.
That's okay.
Can you all hear me at the back? Can you hear me? Loud enough then. So our final speaker today has a lifelong passion for teaching and public speaking, which I really don't share the passion for. This is making me quite nervous. But not only does she teach, but the experience of practicing Iyengar, is that correct, yoga?
Yeah.
Led her to become a birth doula. So she was also an IBCLC and runs a busy private clinical practice as part of Breastfeeding London, and is the course founder. Oh, are you okay? You just wanted to be heard. She's also the lead lecturer and also works as a specialist breastfeeding consultant. Runs a weekly clinic for the NHS. Is that correct?
Correct.
So amongst all that, she also spends her time volunteering as an election leader. I think you've done over 10 years
Service.
over 10 years now, and is a wonderful mother to 3 children and the husband. If there's anything like that. So please give a big warm welcome to Indira Lopez Bassols, and she's speaking about the last pandemic.
So, I hope you can hear me. Yep. So my first apology is that I am one of those people that English is my third language, believe it or not. So if you can catch a little accent, that's because I'm originally from Mexico and have been here in the UK for over 14 years. I have nothing to declare other than I seem to find breasts everywhere. Everywhere I go, they're just following me, so that's what I am. I'm going to ask you please not to take photography because I have permission to share for educational purposes, but not for this to go any further, of those lovely breastfeeding mothers that have given me. But I understand that we're going to put this, I'm happy to share a PDF for anybody that's interested. Just going to tell you a little repeat about me, but yes, I am very grateful for my 3 fully breastfed children. They are 22, 19, and 12 years old, and they have been my best teachers. Everything I've learned in the easy way has been through my lovely children. You can see me there. I work as a breastfeeding specialist consultant for the health visiting team in Merton, and I'm seeing a lot of the complicated cases, which is always really interesting. I have served La Leche League for more than 10 years, and I do that as voluntary in my community. I work also privately as a IBCLC, board certified lactation consultant, and I think that working with babies privately is amazing because I get to see them till we get it right. And that's really a privilege to understand and to learn from these babies when we give them that continuity of care. And yes, I love this cartoon. It says your heart is slightly bigger than the average human heart. But that's because you're a teacher. And yes, I have a few of my students here. I love teaching. I have a real passion for teaching. So you can see here, this is one of our last groups of our Breastfeeding London, which has been a very long labor of love, 8 years to create this course. Here we are. And last but not least, believe it or not, when I have some free time, I love writing. And that's a new area that I've started exploring. So this is me presenting a poster at the European Rotterdam Lactation Consultants Conference, which has just become a peer-reviewed article, The Alchemy of Connection, which is to be published in November. So I'm really excited about sharing. I think there's so much to write about breastfeeding. I used to work at King's College Tongue-Tie Clinic. I used to do frenulotomy. I absolutely hated it. I'm very good at supporting breastfeeding babies, but I'm saying this because I'm sharing some of the cases that I'm sharing have to do with this clinic that I work with. So today, the session I'd like to cover is a set of strategies that can be useful mainly for babies that have never latched. I'm not going to there's one case that touches on a bit of breast refusal, but I'm not going to particularly venture into that area. And the techniques that I'm going to discuss are as simple as skin-to-skin contact, working on position and attachment, breast compression, sandwich hold, shield, teeth. And Kathleen Kendall-Tackett has just coined this term, an oxytocic environment. And I remember Maddie, when I used to train with developing doulas, she used to talk about an oxytocin-boosting environment. Well, we should have coined it and put it, but it's now been coined by her, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So I'm going to present ways that can help babies to learn by association, sort of like rewiring their brains, because some of these babies actually don't know that the breast is a restaurant. And if we can make that connection, then I believe that it's fairly simple to latch babies that have difficulties. And last but not least, I'll show how sometimes you just have to be very creative. Sometimes you just have to think outside the box. Not everything is written in books and published. And that's what these babies have taught me. So I'll be showing and presenting a few clinical cases throughout. So you're all converted. I don't need to tell you this, but I think it's worth remembering. Now we're starting to talk of breastfeeding as that fourth stage of labor, right? We start from the premise that it is a physiological norm, that babies come with these primitive, innate reflexes. We've seen it with the crawl, and that we expect for most babies to attach, to go at the breast in the first 2 hours of their life. Epstein-Gilboa talks about physiological breastfeeding as being just that normal continuum from birth. And breastfeeding is crucial because it sustains that powerful physiological connection when the baby is out, transition into the extrauterine world. So mammals can do it quite simply and in some very different conditions. So why is it hard for us to get it? And And mammals can do it like the manatee, they can do it in water. And here you have a mother of multiples. And they don't seem to have much difficulty getting the milk in some way. So if they can do it, surely, there's also ways that we can help those mothers and babies that are having difficulties latching. So, what are the reasons that we see why babies don't latch? Well, there's multiple reasons, but nowadays we see that there's much more interventions at birth. Interventions sometimes mean that there is separation between the mother and the baby. Then that leads to supplementation, medically indicated or not. That then leads to, if you have to supplement, there has to sometimes be either bottles or alternative methods of supplementation, could be finger feeding. And in other cases we see anatomical issues, babies that cannot latch if they have a tongue tie, if there's a cleft palate and lip, or other things that could be in the picture. So one of the things that I've learned over the years from supporting many, many non-latching babies is that we have to be optimistic. You are the light. If you're the person supporting that baby and you have no confidence in your ability, that will be contagious. But if you have that confidence in you, that's contagious. So even though we have to be optimistic, we cannot and we should never kind of promise things that we don't know whether the baby will latch or not. So some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about are a mixture of these. So skin-to-skin contact, that oxytocic environment, some techniques which I'll describe, the breast sandwich, breast compressions, express breast milk on the nipple areola complex, position and attachment, and in that others I'll be talking about movement and other tools that can sometimes be applied. So breastfeeding is a relationship, and I always have the discussion with my colleague Anna Cannon, who's a infant feeding coordinator, midwife at St. George's Hospital, because I say that when a baby doesn't latch, I see it as an emergency. The earlier I can get there to help that dyad, the better, right? Because most babies have those reflexes very innate in the first few days or hours. And I think the earlier we come and help them, I find that it's much more successful. When babies don't latch, and this is why I think it's an emergency, I think there's time is pressing for these mothers that might feel rejected. If the baby's not latching, the mother will have those feelings. She might feel like an absolute failure. There's something wrong with me, my breast. There's no milk. Why is my baby not latching? When babies don't latch, it can have an impact on supply if the mother's not pumping straight away or expressing. And expressing is hard work, so the longer the gap between that baby latching, the more difficult it will be for that mother to sustain her supply. And of course, the biggest risk is that these babies that don't latch, mothers are at risk of early weaning, of premature weaning, not being ready to wean and not breastfeed at all. So that's one of the main things. So the way I see it, this pretty much looks like, you know, if some of you have supported mothers that have not latched, this is how it looks like. This is how miserable when you're expecting your baby after birth to come and attach at the breast and it doesn't happen. So it's really, when we come and help these moms, is how do we establish that connection? How can we get them to a happier, better place where the baby can latch? So my first case that I'm going to present is I've called it Monica, who had a butterfly suck. And the reason why this mother came to see me was because the baby was 1 week old and it hadn't latched. So the history, I see this mother in the community on day 7. Baby was, just so that you know a little bit of the kind of background of this baby. Baby is born small. It's a very medically managed birth in hospital. Worries about glucose levels, and supplementation is initiated with formula and bottles very early on in hospital. So I see her at 1 week. She has managed to start pumping, and she's pumping exclusively, so that tells me she has a good abundant supply. Baby's weight is not an issue, but the baby has at that 1 week not yet latched. So it's an interesting story because it was actually a La Leche League meeting, and it was a toddlers meeting. So the mother calls me and says, I've got this baby, it's 1 week old, can I come to your La Leche? And I said, sure, but it's a toddlers meeting, you're going to see all these toddlers, big children running around, but of course come, I really think we can help you. So there she is with this tiny baby. We start always skin to skin. I always give the benefit back to the baby. You know, maybe that's the day the baby decides to latch. But what I see when the baby is skin to skin is that this baby seems quite disoriented at the breast. It doesn't really know what it's supposed to do. So, but it's not breast aversion. And a lot of the mamas that I've supported that come to me with babies that are not latching, depending on the age of the baby, will say, my baby's very breast averse, it pushes the breast. Sometimes that's right, but other times it's not. And in this case, there was no breast aversion. So I'm thinking, how can we get into that baby's brain who doesn't know that the breast is a restaurant, that connection, right? How can we imprint that breast equals restaurant? And what we do is first of all, I ask her to sandwich her breast, and with the sandwich breast, I'm going to show a picture, either via syringe or with a bottle. I mean, sometimes if the mother has a bottle of her own milk, just dribbling a little bit of milk, so that, or she can hand express, but the hand expression usually is not enough. You have to give that little extra. So that's really what we do with this baby, with a little bit of extra kind of milk being poured on her breast. Because she has an abundant supply, the baby latches effortlessly. What I would say effortlessly, having worked with so many non-latching babies, I now have like a grading system. Some are really, really hard, some are effortless. So great. I always say, well, I hope never to see you again, maybe for your next child, but I hope not. But anyway, you know where to find me. But sadly, she calls me again. And she calls me and she asks to see me privately. And what she says is her baby's now 1 month old and is not putting on enough weight. So I'm quite puzzled, because I really felt that this mother had a beautiful, abundant supply, and I'm not sure why the weight problem. So at that point, I do an intraoral examination using the Hazel-Baker assessment tool, and I see that the range of movement of the tongue is not optimal. It's quite restricted, and the suck feels quite weak. That's why I called her the butterfly suck, because this baby taught me about these weak sucks. And the best way I can describe it is just that. It's so weak that I could understand why actually this baby is not transferring the milk, right, when this mother had a superb supply. So I say to her, this is what I find. I can refer you to division. We can work on seeing, we can monitor this for a week, see how things are. But she decides to go she starts pumping, draining better her breasts, but she decides to go for division at 1 week. So she goes for division, and again, this baby latches, but then decides not to latch. So this baby latches post-procedure in the tongue-tie clinic and decides not to latch again. So again, she calls me and says, I need your help. That's the second time that has happened. Now you can imagine that the first time where this mother gave bottles to the baby, she was really adamant she did not want to give any more bottles to her baby. But we have a baby that's not latching, so we have to, so the priority should always be feed the baby. So I teach her how to finger feed. So that's what we do. I explain how to finger feed. She keeps attempting to feed the baby at the breast with a NG tube homemade nursing supplement. And interesting, this case also showed me how babies can develop a very strong preference for finger feeding. Any alternative method of supplementation has its pitfalls. And finger feeding is great because it helps babies use their muscles as they do in breastfeeding, but any alternative method can have pitfalls. So what was interesting about this case, just so that you know the end story, she started to realize that the baby would start latching outside her home. Why? I don't know, but it started latching in the garden. It started latching in the coffee place. It started latching everywhere. And I just said to her, well, go and live somewhere outside. and that's how it started. Whether, I mean, I don't know. I really, these cases have taught me so much, but maybe she was very apprehensive at home. She was expecting the baby to latch. It was something to do with that internal pressure she had. But eventually she was able, as the baby started latching outside in the garden, just to go home. And anyway, she managed to latch the baby. It took her approximately 2 or 3 weeks post-division. It was not an easy journey. And here's a picture of the breast sandwich. This was coined by Diana Wissinger, lactation consultant in the US. And it just means shaping your breast like a sandwich to help babies get a deeper latch. Yeah? Those of you that are not familiar with this. So here she is, and again, remember I said she'd come to a La Leche League meeting, and it was quite chaotic, all these toddlers, children, but she went on to breastfeed for a long time, and still today she still sends me these letters about how grateful she is. So wonderful, wonderful story. I want to talk a little bit about these windows of opportunities, and finally, Joanne, who was here, and she's just left, but she was somebody that I also helped many years ago. Her child is now 7 years old, and she came to say hello, and she was exactly one of these cases. So these 2 cases that I've worked with are babies that are 6, 8 weeks old, which I kind of consider as a window of opportunity. And when there is an abundant maternal supply, these are mothers that, I mean, I have so much respect for exclusively pumping mothers. I mean, that's just incredible, the work they put into. But where there's an abundant maternal supply, there is always a chance for that baby to latch. And in these 2 cases, one was a baby post-immunizations. The baby's very fussy, and all she can think about is taking her shirt off, carrying the baby skin to skin, and this baby just throws itself at the breast as if never she'd never had a problem. And it went on to breastfeed without any issue. So it's a great case. And the second one was another case where, again, she was exclusively pumping, and she called me week 8, and she said, I want to try it one more time. I never managed at birth, and it was very easy to latch the baby, again, with just some express breast milk in the areola nipple complex. So that made me think that where there is milk, there is always hope. And the more milk there is, the more easy it is to transfer these babies back to the breast. So I want to talk a little bit about the environment and this kind of oxytocin boosting environment, as Maddie coined it. That it shapes how we feel, right? And how we feel will shape our behavior. So this is me actually with my daughter, 22, 3 years ago, and I gave birth in Mexico in a hospital, like most of us maybe first-time moms do, and hospitals are not particularly that oxytocin boosting place, right? Bright lights, noises, babies crying. So things that are important when we're working with mothers, how can we reverse that trend? How can we kind of create that extra oxytocin? Are trying to see if the mother's comfortable, is it the right temperature? Maybe soft light. If they're at home, it could be music, sometimes scents. Feeling safe, feeling unobserved. This is all Michel Sodent, understanding what he has taught us about oxytocin. And being on baby time, really being there, you as a person helping that mother with no pressure, no time pressure. And Christina Smiley, who's a doctor in IBCLC in the US, talks about this kind of really being on baby time and having no pressures with time. Again, when I started, I said, I think it's an emergency. It's a situation in the sense that we have to jump in quickly. And the longer that baby hasn't latched, it becomes very stressful times for that dyad. Yeah, that sympathetic nervous system is activated. That is a cocktail of stress hormones that long-term, in large amounts, could compete with oxytocin. So the earlier we can help them, the more. So co-wearing, safe bed sharing, co-bathing, without expectations, and just seeing, because again, that's also very, it can happen, right? If the mother's totally relaxed, the baby will be relaxed, and that is always helpful. So this is a mother that I supported. The history, she was a first-time mom. She had a C-section due to gestational diabetes. She happened to be a doctor, and there's no offense to this. I have nothing against doctors, but I'm saying this because sometimes I've worked with a lot of doctors, and they feel that they should know everything, right? And there's this expectation that they put upon themselves. Me as a doctor, I should know how to breastfeed, which sadly is not always the case. So this baby had never latched. It was 4 days old. She was feeding express breast milk via bottle, no formula. She had a lot of milk. She was pumping in huge amounts for that day 4. And she did say, every time I bring the baby to the breast, I feel that my baby gets very cross, it screams, it's very angry, all of that. And especially when babies don't latch, they will say to you, you're my last hope. And that's really sad, because that means that by day 4, you've had tons of midwives, you might have had the infant feeding coordinator in hospital, you might have the peer support, you've had a lot of people that have tried it, and nobody has been able to help this diet. So again, I always start giving the benefit back to the baby. I'm taking my history or taking questions with the mom, skin to skin. You never know. Maybe that is the day that the baby decides to latch at that moment. It usually isn't the case when I'm there. But what I see again is this baby that is at the breast, is skin to skin, and is just doesn't recognize the breast as a restaurant. So again, I'm thinking, how can we create that connection? Breast equals restaurant. So the mother, being a doctor, I felt she was really stressed out about the situation. So I said, okay, let's just change a little bit the chemistry of this room. We're going to dim the lights. We're going to get you comfortable. And we're going to have a set of things ready So if your baby starts to scream, if your baby gets agitated, we'll feed your baby a little bit, calm your baby, and then start that sequence again. And I always talk about it's like a tango dance, right? It's like when you learn something new in life, if you're calm, it's gonna work better. So my aim was to get them both comfortable, and I started my voice of tone. My tone of voice was lowered. We had everything ready. And when working with babies that don't latch, I always try to do the least possible interventions. And an intervention could be a nipple shield. That's an intervention. So I try to do as least as I can, and in some cases we have to do a lot of things, right, and escalate. But again, this was another case where, because she had such an amazing supply and she was pumping so much on day 4, all we did was compressions, breast compressions, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and a little bit of milk poured continuously, because that baby's used to the flow of the bottle at the breast, and I would say that baby really fed. It was very easy to latch the baby. It was quite effortless. So fair enough, we get the baby to latch for the first time, day 4. Is the mother able to replicate that? If I go, is she going to get it, or does she need me to move in with her and do all the other feeds? No. So what we do is I say, okay, now you try it, second breast, baby attaches beautifully, and that was it. That's the end of the story. The mother then, stayed in touch and said that the baby never looked back after latching once. So that's just really important. That's what these babies have taught me. It just takes one go to get that imprint, breast equals restaurant, and in many cases that sequence, if you catch them early on, that sequence just is easy to perpetuate. So what did, I always go, and I learned this when I started being a doula. I used to go to birth. I don't anymore. I don't have much time. But I used to go to birth, and I used to say, what has this birth taught me? What do I need to learn about birth? And it's very humbling, but every birth taught me something about birth or about myself that was crucial. And I've taken that with me in the support I give in breastfeeding. Every diet I come into contact comes to teach me something. If you have that humbleness to learn, to listen, then it makes you a better person, a better supporter. So it was so simple in this case. It was just about changing the chemistry of the environment and making it a little bit more oxytocin boosting, and that was it. It was relatively easy. So Winstrom talks about, and this is quite an old quote, 1993, but she says, if the contrary attempts to force the infant to feed are noxious or repetitive, the resulting stress and neurobehavioral disorganization can potentially result in learned associations of feelings of distress with sensations at the breast, causing the aversive behaviors often described as breast refusal. And we see this a lot. And, if you work in hospital and you have a baby that's not latching, it comes from a very well-intentioned place. But we see sometimes mothers describe, my baby's been pushed at the breast, my baby's been shoved at the breast, and that is not a good association. That pushing a baby when the baby's screaming and not happy is not going to help. And it can create that breast refusal or aversion. So I think that the feeding dance, this feeding sequence, is important for us to keep in mind. It has to be the parasympathetic state mode, which helps babies to be more organized, to have more organized responses, so that they can elicit these breast-seeking behaviors that most newborn, full-term, healthy babies have. And in terms of that kind of communication between the mother and the infant, again, we know now that mothers are more in that first few days, they're on that oxytocin high. They're right side of the brain is much more predominant, right? That's why they can't think, they can't retain information. So it helps to start to calm the mother, to make her comfortable, so that she can start tuning into those subtle cues that her baby is giving her, language. And the other thing that we know is that oxytocin makes the mother much more intuitively responsive, and that's all of, I call her the oxytocin mother, Uvna Smolberg research. So these are important things to keep in mind in terms of the baby and the mother. So this is another very interesting case. This is a baby that went for tongue-tie division at 1 month old. This is actually the baby of a colleague of mine who's an IBCLC. And again, latches post-division, but decides not to latch on afterwards. So she takes this picture because you'll see that the consultant that did the division said that the baby was very angry and it was very hard to keep the baby still. So, I mean, I don't know if you can, let me see if this is a pointer. Maybe not. Anyway, this is what the mother describes, that she received a different baby, a baby that was very angry, and that the baby was held quite firmly. And having done divisions, it's very crucial to hold properly a baby. You don't want the baby to move when you're inserting those scissors. So, again, just a little bit of the history. Yeah, I think I've said this already. So the mother describes a different baby post-procedure. She describes a baby that screams nonstop and that will not feed on anything. This baby will not feed, obviously, at the breast, at a bottle. It would not finger feed. It would not cup feed. The only way she could feed this baby was with a spoon, little bits of her expressed breast milk. And the baby was crying nonstop if it wasn't in a bath or sleeping. So, you know, she kept like in touch with me, and I was like, are you sure your baby's always crying? And she was really sending these videos of a baby that was it seemed to me in a shock state. So again, she is a lactation consultant. She's got her scales. She's kind of really worried because she can see the baby is not taking as much, and the baby only puts on 40 grams in 1 week. So the mother starts to take her baby to osteopathy treatments. And the osteopath says, it seems to me your baby's in a shock state. And it takes several attempts, several sessions with the osteopath. She's desperate, you know, how she had breastfed. She was actually tandem feeding her toddler at the time, and she cannot imagine herself with her baby not latching. And the baby does latch during an osteopathy treatment. The baby is in a 1.5 hour, and he's doing the manipulations there, and the baby latches. And thank God, that's the kind of happy end of the story. In terms of the latching, she still had a baby that was in this shock state. That's the only best way that I can describe it. And again, it went on a nursing strike around 1 year, where the mother, obviously with this history, relives these emotions and thinks, that's it, my baby's going to stop breastfeeding and not want to latch again. So what is the lesson? The lesson is that babies that are in that shock mode or that sympathetic nervous mode state have more difficulty latching. And in many cases, body work, this is not new. It's not new at all. We've known it forever, but we now start to have the evidence. And I'm just hoping that this is things that can permeate, that can be accessible to the NHS and integrated in our system of care. The last thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is this idea of motion or movement. And a couple of years ago, I went to shadow Jack Newman in Toronto at his clinic. And I was very surprised because he had these birthing balls in his clinic, and I couldn't understand. I said, maybe it's the antenatal sessions. He has all the pregnant mothers there, and maybe that's why he has these birthing balls. But I actually witnessed several babies that had divisions that were not latching, and I saw how they were sitting in these birthing balls and they were helping to calm the baby. So that taught me a lot about how important movement can be for some of these difficult cases of babies that cannot latch. So this is another case. This was a 5-month-old baby that I saw at the tongue-tied clinic, who was coming back because it had a reattachment. So the baby is just post-division, and obviously it's an older baby. It has a memory of that division, and it's again in a state of crying and crying and crying. And the mother is also crying. Usually when they put a baby through a second division, or even the first one, it's quite normal for the mother to be in tears. She's not sure that she did the right thing or not. But in her case, it's a second time. So the mother is crying, the baby is crying. And you can imagine from my point of view, we have to act quickly, because we want the baby to latch post-division to stop the bleeding, if there's any bleeding. That's really that's why we're pressed with time. So I asked the mother, how do you calm your baby normally? What do you do to calm your baby? And she says, well, I rock and sing. And there we are, King's Tongue-Tied Clinic. There's a big card there. I said, it's all yours. Walk and sing and dance with your baby. And that would calm the baby. But every time she'd come and sit down, the baby would start screaming. So I said, you just need to open your breast, do the same, and latch the baby. And we latched that baby, so it wasn't very difficult. But again, it just tells you how we have to meet the parents where they are. We have to see the dyad and be very creative in our approach. What can help? I mean, this is not written anywhere, but it was simple, it was straightforward in my mind, because we really needed to latch this baby. So I'm almost finished, but I want to talk a little bit of this idea of the breast restaurant, which is the best place to start. And I work with, I would say, the majority of the non-latching babies that I see are on bottles. They've been bottle feeding their babies expressed or formula or a mixture. And Catherine Watson-Gemma, who is I totally adore her, one of the IBCLC's American gurus, who's taught me a lot. She talks about trying to bottle feed idiomatically. That means trying to make the bottle as similar to the breast. So she would say, be really skin to skin. This baby's not totally skin to skin, but you could have the baby skin to skin, but right there at the breast. Because a lot of moms that I see that are bottle feeding, they come, and each time they start to open to prepare the breast, the baby's already screaming. And sometimes we have to take baby steps, and we have to say, okay, take your clothes off, feed with the bottle at the breast, so the baby starts to associate. And then it's not that difficult, or it's easier to then, take the bottle and offer the breast. So, encouraging the baby to gape, and instead of, like we normally just shove the bottle into the baby's mouth, it's similar to breastfeeding. You try and bring that baby to the bottle, as she says, sort of like scooping the baby towards the bottle so it can latch. Pace bottle feeding, that's something that also I think is we know much more now about. And swapping sides when breastfeeding. I've mentioned breast compressions, and I hope that you're all familiar with these, but Jack Newman has a few leaflets and videos on his website that you can look these up. And I find that they're particularly useful for non-latching babies, for those babies that have been on bottles, that are expecting that fast flow. And we know that a breast doesn't behave like a bottle. It cannot behave like a bottle. We might have that first letdown, then we have subsequent letdowns. So that breast compression can help to mimic, to some degree, that flow. And as you can see, I've tried to present, as I say, things that are less interventions, and the harder it is to latch a baby, or the more things have been attempted without a good result, then I might use in what I call the therapeutic use of nipple shields, and particularly because they seem to be useful for babies that have bottle fed. Babies that have bottle fed recognize that teeth, that plastic teeth. And it's not a real breast, but even if the mother has a normal nipple, in some cases, a shield can be a transition. When everything else has been tried, it can work. I never use shields in the first few days in the colostrum phase. I think that's a bit really early, but I have used them with babies that have not attached. So the other thing, and again, I'm just kind of sharing my knowledge. None of this it's not my invention. I wish I was so smart. But Kathleen Goebel, who's done a lot of work on adoption, and she adopted 2 children and breastfed them. She talks about if a shield doesn't work, getting the teeth, because that's what the baby recognizes as a restaurant. So getting the teeth and actually putting it on the breast so that the baby starts to associate that place as a restaurant, right? So that's another technique that can be used. And I just want to maybe finish with this. This is Dr. Jennifer Gamboa's, who talks about this kind of LLL mantra, which is patience and persistence, or that notion of tincture of time. These babies, it can take time, and it's very distressing for the mother if you're talking about weeks or a long time. And we have to remain optimistic and support them all the way through. So being creative, being bold, because as I said at the beginning, sadly, not everything is written in books or published, and I think this is just an emerging new field where we have to put that creativity to the rescue. And I just want to quote Diana Vissinger. She says, expect success because expecting success leads to success. So if you're confident, if you take that confidence with you, it's good. It's good to take that confidence with you because it might lead to success. And I talked already about this kind of contagious confidence. Trying to restore normality by doing less and just starting with the basics, which could be skin to skin, checking the environment to see if it's oxytocin boosting. And when you've tried different things, well, we've got to try and think outside the box. And again, this just idea of humbleness, that I am very grateful because it's the babies that have taught me all this. I owe everything that I know to my babies. So thank you very much. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah. Is it questions? Yeah. How do I do this?
You should have a clip. Oh, has it got stuck in your... There you go.
But do I take the question or
yeah,
repeat
you can,
it?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, we've got about 5 minutes, unless you have to...
Do you want to say your question and I'll repeat it? Oh, it's not working.
I think it does go in there. It's just...
It does?
It does
okay.
go in there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I did. Hello? I don't think it's working. It does work?
It does. It goes down into the other room.
Okay, that's fine. I did mention it with the baby that had the weak suck, if you remember. I did mention the SNS. It can be useful, but and it just depends on the situation. Because if you have a mother that doesn't have a kind of abundant supply, then of course that having a nursing supplementer can help. But in many cases, the first thing is just to latch the baby, to get the baby to kind of suckle. So it has its place, and yes, absolutely, I do use it when it's appropriate. Yeah. Any other questions? That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We do still have another day coming, so hopefully we'll see a lot of your faces back again tomorrow. And I do hope you enjoyed today. If you could, there was a feedback form. If you could fill that out, and then at the bar, at the desk at the front where you registered, we've now got it set up with your, if you did want a certificate, it's there. Just hand in your lanyards and your form. And yeah, we'd like to reuse the lanyards if possible for tomorrow, and then maybe again next year we'll do it again. But yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
How do I get it out?
You just, is that one yours? Yes. You literally just take it out, and then it should just...